speaking with me today, Francis. Today's actually Australia Day, which to most Aussies, they celebrate it. They usually have a barbecue, or, a lot of the young ones will go out to something like the big day out. But to quite a few genuine Australians, it's not something to celebrate. In fact, it's a day that brings back a lot of painful memories and is truly insulting to people. Um, and a lot of people don't really know about the real history to Australia and what the 26th of January actually means to people. Um, Now you're part Aboriginal, so you know why it's a day that's quite insulting to many people. Um, do you mind giving me sort of an idea of what actually happened and why it is a day that is quite awful
Yes,
for people?
yes, I can, sister. To the best of my knowledge and the stuff that's been passed on to me by Aboriginal people, a couple of Aboriginal fellas that come from around the Sydney area, because when the white man landed, there was over 600 different nations or tribes, them fellas we had in Australia, and then along come the white man. And let me tell you a little story that I tell people just to try and make them understand, or to open a pathway for understanding. Is that this is a story I was told. There was a couple of fellas apparently standing in Manly, because they named Manly after the Aboriginal peoples that they seen there, because them fellas didn't have to go looking for tucker. They had ample food, was all seafood, and they looked so healthy. And they said, look, aren't they manly looking people? So that's how they named Manly, I believe. This is what I was told. And anyway, these strangers, first of all, I tell this story and I say, the Aboriginal fellas was down there and had no worries, didn't have to go to a 9 to 5 job, had a great way of life, which suited them, and they had freedom to be who they were to a degree. And then one day they looked across the ocean, and they got excited and said, look, islands pushed by clouds. Of course, they were boats and they'd never seen this type of thing before, not huge vessels. Anyway, the islands pulled up, the clouds, of course, being the sails, and these white fellas got out all dressed in funny clothes, got into this lifeboat, which we thought was an amazing canoe. We would love to have a couple of them fellas. And they came ashore. Well, it is said that an Aboriginal man, elderly fella, old fella, and a couple of young people, a boy would estimate to be 17 or 18 and a girl maybe 14, was with him. And they came up and they had a look at these white fellas, and the old fella said in his tongue, he said, look, these are our ancestors come back, because the belief of the people at that time, Anna, was that when you die, your spirit goes to the land in the east. So when they landed on the eastern coast, of course, the reason we thought they might be our dead ancestors is that the only people we'd ever seen with the white skin was our the dead people, because they go a paler colour, so you can understand what they thought. And they couldn't understand them, but they looked into their eyes. I often say to people, and then they said, yeah, they're certainly dead, because the English at that time particularly were quite reserved. Somebody who holds their feelings in, they don't show anything, emotion in their eyes.
Yeah.
So they did think that they were the dead ancestors, and they allowed them to come ashore. And of course, then two amazingly different cultures come to life. One culture that believed in monetary gain and power through possession and stuff, and Aboriginal people, I guess, believed in just living with family and being able to get food, and that was their main object, and the rest of the time they had free. We didn't, of course, wear clothes. The English wore clothes. And we thought that was rather comical to a lot of people. We were fascinated by that. But then very soon the English showed their true colours, in as much as that they began to just walk across the land, take water from the people's places, and they had guns and everything, and they didn't ask for permission to do this. And of course, our culture being one that you went on to another person's land, you could do that if you didn't carry a boomerang or spear or any fighting sticks or anything, but you had to carry what they call a message stick. It's a long story, but anyway, we weren't used to this, and when we objected to them just coming in and pushing our women around and shooting at our animals for no reason at all, because we took what we needed to eat, the English killed these creatures for pleasure, which we didn't understand, you see. So it started a huge conflict, and of course we were no match for the guns and the horses and stuff. And so when Captain Cook arrived, there was considered to be around about between 6,000 and 8,000 Aboriginal people in the Sydney Parramatta area.
Yeah.
But in less than 50 years, but in approximately 50 years, there was less than 500 of these people left. Such was the slaughter or the genocide of Aboriginal people. For instance, if you were on an Aboriginal, let's put this, if you considered it was your land, which it wasn't, of course, they took it by force, but there was Aboriginal people living there, and they were a damn nuisance. All you had to do was make up get some flour and put some, I don't know, it was arsenic, I think they put in it. And of course, it's a terrible way to die. They killed quite a few people like that. They shot the people. They also gave them, it is said that they gave them blankets from the sick bays on the boats, smallpox. And of course, sailors was seen coming up to the shore, and they had sticks. They wouldn't touch the blankets, but they threw them got the sticks on them and threw them on the beach. And of course, Aboriginal people said, "Thank you, that was lovely." They died so quickly, the Aboriginal people. They were not used to this type of thing because they'd never had sexual transmitted diseases, for instance. They didn't have that until the whites arrived, and they certainly didn't have smallpox. But once it started, they were very, very prone to catching this, and they had no hope at all. They died so quickly. They got a big fever with smallpox. They said that they didn't know what was going on. They died so quickly they couldn't bury one another in places, and there was bodies rotting in the rocks and that. This is what I'm told, and bodies floating around the harbour there in Sydney. I don't know, it was Sydney Harbour. I remember around that area, around the Hawkesbury, because the people would get a fever and they would go down into the water to cool off, and of course this terrible smallpox would kill them. But it goes on. So of course the 26th Australians celebrated as Australia Day. To the people, to my father's people, it's the beginning of genocide against the Aboriginal people. So I understand both sides. I can understand both sides. You see, I bear no grudges against white people. My mother was English and German, and very white and very English and German, and very rigid in a lot of ways, because that is the culture of westernised people, where the Aboriginal people were perhaps rigid in different ways, but when it come to the human side of things, they weren't as rigid. For instance, if you done something bad in an Aboriginal camp, you've got to remember there was over 500, 600 different tribes, so they had, the ideas varied and the stories varied and the culture varied to a degree. But if you done something wrong, they'd kill you. But we never got into torture. So when they seen it's written as a historical fact apparently that they were flogging a poor damned Irish fella, and his ribs, part of his ribs and his kidney fat was showing, and the Aboriginal, they stopped the flogging because they could hear this wailing all around in the bush. The Aboriginal people seen what was happening. He was being flogged to death, and they thought, my God, this is terrible. So they began the death wail, and they say they stopped the flogging for a while because the bloke died. But just two different, totally different cultures. So if you try to explain to white people, this is the problem I have. I've got a way of explaining now, developed that skill of saying things like, now imagine you're living here in Sydney or wherever you're living, and suddenly a strange craft lands, and these people get out of it. But they got powerful weapons. They got nothing you could do about it, and they come inside. They might shoot your parents, rape your mother, or rape your sister, or whatever, and kill a couple of you, and then kick you up the backside and say, "You go down on the river and live. We're going to take your home away from you because we're too powerful." I said, how would you feel a couple of generations, 2 or 3 generations later? Would you think that they were nice people to do that? Would you feel any anger towards them or stuff? So that's a little story I come up with because I think it shows in a simple form of understanding that once you do terrible things to people, that goes down from one generation to another, especially when you keep doing these things.
That's right.
It's done in a more subtle way now. They don't shoot them anymore, Aboriginal people.
And that's what I
But
wanted to.
they,
Sorry, I was going to say that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because the problems did not stop there, and then I think it was starting. Was it the 19? When was the stolen generation? When did that happen? I think it was
oh,
the
I have
50s.
to think about that, sister, because the thing with me that I was a little lucky, because my father was part of the stolen generation, he was taken off his people. Um, but the people said, why wasn't you taken? I know why I wasn't. I had a white mother. And of course, that would have caused a furore. That would have caused a bit of a hiccup in the system.
Yeah.
So they didn't do that. But
Did your
I,
dad ever
I
tell
can't
you?
know. I think it was in the 40s, was it?
Yeah, I think so. I
40s.
think, yeah, the 1945 or something rings a bell. But did your dad tell you exactly what happened to him?
He would never talk about it. I felt sorry for my dad
Yeah.
because he was what they call an uncle. He wanted to please the white man because there was no really hardly any coloured people living in Euston, in the little town I was in. There was one other group who denied their Aboriginal culture, and we did too, because my mother said, "You're Indian." My father was part Indian and part Aboriginal. So my mother always said, "You're Indian," and stuff like that. But I found out later, my mother slipped a few times, and I found out my nana. I said to my mother, "Why has Nana got all that flour on her face?" It looked like flour to me. I was a boy. She said, "Shh, quiet, boy." She said, "Your Nana's embarrassed and ashamed because she's Aboriginal." And that's how I found out. And I had another 2 aunties that were like that. They wore all this makeup, and they were both. No, one of them was with a white fella. See, so they tried. It's so damn. It's bloody sad, Anna, because this land, Australia, the land of the free, and what's the name? It's not free for Aboriginal people.
No.
It's definitely not, and it's wrong. But there are people like yourself and a lot of good people that are still around, and I understand why they do it. It's through ignorance. It's through sheer ignorance because they can't understand. They think that you have a right to come to another person's land and tell them that their culture's all wrong, but they should dress like the white man, think like the white man, talk like the white man, and act like the white man until they will become almost as unhappy as what the white man is. That's not bad, is it?
That's a pretty good way of describing it. But
I'm sorry, am I talking too much
no,
for
no,
this?
no. It's fascinating. It's very interesting, and I just think people need to know what it was like, because this is what I think is so wrong with today. Is a lot of Aussies, as in not Indigenous Aussies, but I guess people like me who originally came from over here. A lot of them just think that it's been a couple of 100 years now, and that everyone should just move on, and it's almost like they just think people should forget what's happened. But the problem with that is they don't understand why you can't forget it. Because as you said, two different, completely different, night and day cultures. One very materialistic. It was all about power. It was all about money, which is the British, of course. And then the Indigenous Australians were so in touch with nature, the most incredibly connected spiritual people ever on earth. And now we are expecting people just to forget their culture. It's almost like, I don't know, saying to the Chinese to now be Indian.
Yes, yes.
Like you just can't. You
No, it doesn't work, love.
People.
It doesn't work.
And I think what's happening today is we are still ignoring the fact that we're trying to make people fit into something that just cannot be. It's like you can't squish people into being a square, so to speak, if they were round. You just cannot do that.
No.
And these problems have just gotten out of control because now there's a lot of problems with alcoholism and drugs and suicide. And what really concerned me was the fact that in Australia, if I get this statistic right, I hope I do, the highest rate of, I think it's black people in jail in the world, not just in Australia, but
I wasn't aware. I know in America there's a huge
Yep.
thing of black people, but I didn't. Oh yes, I do know that. I didn't know it was in the world, sister, but
so.
I do know it's huge in Australia.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was because I watched the John Pilger documentary, and that's why I just have been incredibly shocked about it all, because I guess I thought that things were getting better for Aboriginals, and it's just not. It's just, they push people away into little outback towns, and, they're creating laws for Aboriginals and ones that the white people don't have to follow. And, if people understand what happened in South Africa, Australia is doing the same thing, which is called apartheid.
Yes, I agree with that, actually. It's a form of apartheid.
Yeah.
And also, like you, I'll be honest, I've been over here for about 13 years and haven't only been back to Australia a couple of times. I, too, was quite taken back by that documentary by John Pilger. I thought, my God, they're not still doing that. Because I can remember when they were doing it. I can remember, I could tell you stories about that. But I wasn't, and my first wife, or I only had one wife, but I loved her to pieces. And she lived on a mission up at Moree. And geez, Moree was incredibly racist in them times. I don't know what it's like now, but I do know that this new government that's in is certainly not addressing the real problems. And I don't know, I think the Labor government did try to address it in some way, in a lot of ways, but this government in here is a dangerous government, not only for the Aboriginal people, but for all Australians. Apparently, I've seen a bit on it. I try to keep out of politics, but I'm asked to talk about it sometimes.
Sure.
But I'm not a big fan. Politicians are like babies' napkins. They're full of crap and need to be changed regularly. That's my opinion.
Oh, it's such a good saying. But what I'm concerned about is the Aboriginal youth as well, because a lot of them seem to have absolutely no hope, and I think for things to really improve, that's what we need to address, is how do we help people, I guess, integrate, because they have to. There's no way you can't now, because
No, we've got to.
The country is so different and developed now, but it's all, we need to give them hope. We need to give them purpose and a reason for not giving up on life. And it's really disturbing, but there's a huge rate of suicide amongst Aboriginal teenagers.
Yes.
And you only think about harming yourself when you're your lowest point in your life and you have no hope. And that's, I think, is the biggest problem. Um, and knowing that most of society does look down on Aboriginal people still. I've heard some incredibly racist things from people. Even some people I know, not in my family, but even in people close to me. And it's awful. And I find it's something we all need to address as a nation together, and not just expect, oh, they'll take care of it. We need to start caring about people as well, and also realizing what we have done. I haven't done it personally, but I still feel responsible.
But you got to be the responsibility that we've got is to recognise what was done and to try to understand. It's very simple arithmetic.
Yeah.
You can destroy a whole nation of people, but you can't expect them suddenly to get up and say, oh, that's all right, we'll all join in with you and be happy friends. Once you create anger or pain, emotional pain or terrible things to people, then it sinks in and then it's handed down from one generation to another. So what you've got here, I could solve this, I think, in my own way. The thing is that you've got to allow Aboriginal people to live as Aboriginal people.
That's right.
And once they're happy within themselves, like any human being, you're not going to have problems. You show me a happy person, and I'll show you a person that's not going to be any problem to anyone. But you harm people and disturb them emotionally and mentally. Of course you're going to have problems. And people say, oh, it's not, why don't they just chill out and forget it? They have no idea. I mean, I look at people and I know the lights are on, but there's nobody home with these people. They don't seem to have... it doesn't register. But, age for me has been a blessing in a lot of ways, Anna. I haven't always been as cool as this. My way of solving my problems was with my fists, as a lot of Aboriginal people do, because we feel so frustrated. You feel put down all the time, so you have to rise above that. You can do two things. You can just cower away and try and keep away from all this, or you can stand up, and I chose to stand up, and I've actually now become, I don't know whether you know it, but I've become quite well known over here for some strange reason.
I was just going to ask you your background, because I think everyone watching would be very interested to know exactly what you have done with your life, because I knew a little bit, but when you told me, I was quite overwhelmed by how much, like, you've already done many lifetimes worth of amazing things in your life, and it's very inspiring, I think, not only to the average person, but also to Aboriginals as well, to know that you've been able to know about the history, but also for it not to ruin your life, but if anything, to improve it. And also you spend your life trying to get a lot of good messages out into the world. So do you mind just telling everyone, if you can sort of sum it up, what you now do and what you have done in your life?
It's a bit hard to sum up in a simple sentence, but I always tongue-in-cheek tell everybody I'm a legend. But we are all legends, and we've all got a light to shine, but I've always found the courage to shine my light. I have no problems, because I learned one thing: if you believe in yourself, it's a lot easier to look like you're brave than if you're not. It doesn't take any courage for me to do what I do. I've done a lot of things that people think is very courageous, and I said to them, it's not, well, you've got to have a certain amount of courage. I mean, I stopped a robbery on a train one day and everybody thought it was amazing that I'd done that. I just don't believe in fear, because fear stops us from you understand what I mean, and most people will. Fear is our worst enemy. It stops us from falling in love lots of times. It stops us from being who we really are. It stops us from saying what we really think. It stops us from doing what we really want to do. It's all based on fear. And the ruling classes, there's only a handful of them, the really powerful people, corporate companies, they use that old traditional fear motive to manipulate millions of people, and it works. My problem is there are too many damn sheep out there, and it's trying to get them to open up to a different, to look at the wider picture of life. I've learned to do this because I had a passion. I've got a passion for life, I guess. I always had a passion. I've had several passions, and some of my passions have come true, and I say to young people when I'm dealing with them, I wanted to be a cowboy. So when I left school, I became a cowboy, I became a stockman, drover and stuff. And then I lived on and off, riding horses, used to shoot wild boar from horseback. And I was a reasonable rider, and my mum and dad were good riders too. So again, it's my background allowed me to do that. And I didn't think a lot of it. I had a lot of fun, riding horses, loved it, and working with sheep and cattle properties. But I had dreams. I'd love to go overseas one day and see different countries, but I thought that'll never happen, But again, that's a non-belief in yourself. Yeah. But when I started travelling in my 50s, I've been travelling for about 14 years out of 16 years or something, and 17 years. I've been travelling.
You've been around the world pretty much quite a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been to, I haven't, of course I could never in one lifetime go to every country, but I've been to many countries. I've been to the Yukon, Alaska, British Columbia, America on a couple of occasions. In fact, they were threatened to stop me coming to America to speak because they didn't like me criticising their government. I done a talk.
Oh, really? That was yes, America. Yes. That's not surprising.
Yeah. Typical. No, it's not surprising. I found them very insular people in a lot of ways because there's only a small amount of these people have passports. So they don't, and you show me anyone who doesn't travel. You can read books and you can look at television, but there's nothing like travelling to open your mind, and the understanding comes about 10 times quicker than doing it the other way. So it's a quick learning thing. But I started off, as I said, as an Aboriginal boy, went to nearly all-white school and was bullied a lot. So my dad was an amateur boxer, done a bit of amateur boxing, and he taught me to box. But the strange part was it was my dad who was the pacifist, and he was Aboriginal. My mother was the aggressive one, and she said, "You're a little warrior, you're a real Australian. You get up and give it back to them." So I took my mother's advice, got into a bit of trouble every now and again, but I decked more of them than they decked me. The only blokes that could beat me in the school was the big guys, and they had too much weight for me. But I had a brilliant right hand and damn good hand speed, and stuff. But, look, that was my way of fighting back and standing up, I think. But I regret doing a lot of things. The only things I regret in my life mainly, Anna, is having hurt people, and that's my brothers. I've broken men's noses, knocked men out, and now I look back on that. But of course, again, in retrospect, you don't know at that time. You can only go with what you know. So everybody around them little towns, there were a lot of rednecks, and I grew up in them areas. But it's just through ignorance. But once I left Houston, and I left at 16 and went out on my own and worked and travelled a lot in Australia, and I had a wagonette and married a beautiful part Aboriginal Polynesian girl, and we had 5 children. Yep. But then I always thought to myself, well, I'm pretty ignorant. I've not had much education. I want my children to have education. So I took my 5 children and my wife to Canberra, because my brother, I only had one real brother, and he lived there, and thus began an interesting thing in my life. I always wanted to be a cowboy, and I wanted to be a gunfighter, so I made a western called Give My Regards to the Devil using local people and using friends just to act in it for a bit of fun.
Yep.
Lo and behold, my Aussie sister, I won the International Moomba Film Festival outright against 74 entries from around the globe. And I realised then, it's the only time I've ever walked the red carpet, but I realised then, my God, I can't believe this.
That's big, yeah.
This is amazing. And then I picked up 2 state awards later on. And then I thought, how did I get 1 state award for my work in education? But then I got another one. And then the penny began to drop. And when I started travelling, I thought, my whole life's changing here. Doors are opening left, right and centre for me. But what once used to be amazing, Anna, has now become pretty much normality for me. You see what I mean? So I think to myself now, if we're going to make change, something we said before, start with the young people, because the older people are victims of being subdued by fear and by being sucked into the comfort zone, because there is no freedom in the comfort zone. There you can have all that you want. What have I got in my home? I once said to myself, have I got love? Have I got freedom, laughter, happiness? Or have I only got this insidious thing that we call personal possession, that we invite in as a guest, then it becomes the host, and finally your master? And that happened to me, and I lost my daughter. She was 23 with cancer, and that was a great shock to me. And then my wife suicided, and then that kicked me up the arse, and I needed to kick up the arse because I started to get involved in possessions, and that's when I thought about my stuff. So I sold everything I had, and this was when I was 48, and bought me a sailing boat. I always wanted to be a pirate, so I became a pirate. Nearly got bloody shipwrecked a couple of times up on Fraser Island. But I ended up in the Whitsundays, and lots of pretty ladies, and smoked a lot of marijuana and drank a lot. But I realised I was like a lot of people. I was hiding pain, emotional pain. So then I got this. I started telling stories to school children on a little island. They'd come out there in Sydney, and Pittwater it was, a place called the Basin. And some teachers were there one day. They were sitting around, and I'd come into the firelight, and I just peered at them through the fire. I said, do you want to hear a story about the old Wirrigan man that lives here, and his spirit is watching you right now? The kids loved it. They got a bit frightened, but they loved it. Yeah. And a teacher said to me, would you be able to come to my school? I said, sister, I don't know about that. But she convinced me to do that, so I went there, and they said, you have to be passed to see if you're eligible to do this or whatever. The funny part, there was 3 teachers come out to see 3 of these sector people. They would never bloody clue what I was saying. Anyway, they knew nothing about Aboriginal. But my personality and my warmth, the children love me. Yeah. And my joke is, I don't blame them. If I met somebody like me, I'd love them too. And that's typical Aussie humour, But I found if you come from your heart, most people, including yourself and other people that I meet, often say to me, Francis, I can feel your warmth because I have an open heart, and I've got the bloody courage, guts to get up there and speak the truth. Yeah. I hope in a positive way, although I'm not well educated. I'm intelligent, but don't get the two mixed up. There's a difference between intelligence and education, but you can have both, yes, which is a nice balance if you've got both. But anyway, that happened, and I started telling stories, and I met quite a young woman. She was a poet, and I loved her poetry, and we got in touch, and I said, if you come out to Campbelltown, my son's out here, you get catch a train if you got time. Donna Hackinson, her name was. She was 23 years old. I was 54, and she was 23, yeah, or 55. Anyway, we met, and my God, she looked like a schoolgirl. She had plaits and glasses. she's a cute little lady, but I felt terribly guilty about it all because, I mean, yeah, I love women, I love men too, I love everybody, but she's, you know, young women are a pain in the neck, you know, to an older bloke like that. But she convinced me, well, she said, I thought you were cool, and I'm a woman, I'm not a child. Anyway, we finally got together, we've had 2 children, and we never lived with one another. And we were miles apart and a different culture. She wanted to settle down, have children, and I wanted to keep travelling. I wanted to go back up, bought another boat, sold the one I had, bought another boat, and wanted to go back up the islands because I loved the way it is. But while I was with her, she was the one who also helped me, convinced me that I should be telling the culture as I know it, and she was a big help to me. In fact, I often say when I'm on stage and say to people, I've learnt more about being a man from women than I ever did from men.
Yeah, wow.
And you can understand that on the spiritual side, and that calmed me down a lot. You know, made me look at things differently. She was highly intelligent and still is. We're good mates still, and I have a daughter now that's 22, Nirami.
Yep.
You know about that,
I
don't
do.
you? Yeah.
She's very well known, very gifted at a very young age with photography, and she has a huge following
Yeah.
online. She's probably got hundreds and thousands of people who just like can't wait
She's got a bigger
pictures
following. She's
and
got
and she's just she's a young mum, and she's
Yeah.
very, I really admire this about her and Matt, is that they're very into natural parenting with Alba, and it's clear to see that she's a very healthy, happy, beautiful baby that is being nurtured rather than like controlled. Because a lot of parenting that we do today is about molding our children into what the parents think a child should be, whereas really you should allow a child's spirit to develop.
Exactly, I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's what I love about Nirami and Matt, because you think that young people today wouldn't really know how to be good parents, and it must be to do with her background as well, and because she's your daughter, she has your sense of spirituality as well that's just come out naturally.
And her mother, to be fair, her mother was very academic. She represented Queensland Youth at one. So she's a very academic, highly academic girl, and a lovely young woman too. And for the breakup that I had with her, she's not to blame for any of that. I take full responsibility for that because I believe in total honesty as much as you possibly humanly can. Yeah. I think lies are a very silly thing to do because it's hard to remember what lies. But I say to people, I don't need any pieces of paper. Only politicians need that because they're rehearsing it all the time. I don't have to rehearse the truth. The truth is in here, and I get up on stage, I can talk for literally hours to people, and they seem to, they enjoy it, I suppose, because I suppose I've realised since I was a child I was very different to other people. I always felt that, Anna, But now it's all come. But anyway, I ended up, when I started travelling, just to finish that off for you, that I went to the Yukon, Alaska, British Columbia, and America down on this free trip that was given to me because they wanted me. I'm a reasonably good speaker, I guess, and they wanted me to represent the Aboriginal people of Victoria because I belong to the Yorta Yorta people, some other Aboriginal people, and we went on this tour and shared culture with the First Nations people of America, Canada, Yukon and Alaska. And that was a very humbling experience for me, and I realised just how beautiful these people were. Everybody hugged one another, and I thought, my God, this is the way we should all be living, free and trust and all that. And it was a marvellous experience, and when I came back from doing that, that sowed the seeds, and I realised they asked me back to the Yukon because they wanted the best of the last 10 years in storytellers, and they said, you've been voted by committee as well as by popular public vote to be one of the, they say, I suppose they say that to lots of people, but one of the most memorable storytellers. I am a good storyteller, I realise that. But yeah, so I went back to do that, and that's when I realised. I came back home and I thought, geez, my life's changed. Something's telling me something. It's a spiritual thing. So I sold everything I had, my boat and everything, and I just went for it, and I started travelling, and I met Jane, of course, and we travelled together. She's become my agent, and she loves me to bits, and I love her, and which is lovely. It's nice to be in love.
Yeah.
It's important to share your journey with others, especially someone special, and so it began. Then I went to, apart from those places, I went to, I've done shows in Vietnam.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty
That's
interesting.
amazing. Yeah. And when you say you do a show, you're doing do you just do spur of the moment stuff, or do you plan
Yeah,
things you do?
I don't think about what I'm going to do because I don't see any point in it.
Wow.
I just go with it. I can't explain to you, but I know I done the Four Winds, big Four Winds festival in Wellington, the Windy City of Wellington in New Zealand. I've done 2 tours in New Zealand, but it's the UK, hang on, Vietnam, New Zealand, Iceland. I spent 5 weeks in Iceland
Did you?
doing shows.
Wow.
Yeah, and many places in Europe, especially Germany. The Germans seem to like me, but I realise wherever I go, people will like it because I think I've got that skill or understanding of humanity that if you come from your heart,
Yeah.
and it's not what you say, it's what's meant by what you say. And I've learnt to stop being judgmental to people because I realise if somebody's nasty to me, and occasionally that happens, I always say, well, look, bro, you got a problem with that, but it's not my problem, bro,
Yeah,
but
it's
I
yours.
hope you get
Yeah.
over it, But I don't judge you. I'd be your friend anytime. And I have swung a few racists around in Australia, which was interesting. Now, interesting here, Anna, that I don't often come up against racism here. Occasionally, but it's more underground. The English haven't quite got the guts that an Australian had. I don't mind a racist that comes up and says, I don't like you because you're black or something. And I said, well, I don't particularly like you, but it's not because you're white, because, not exactly very bright, mate, so you'll have to forgive me for that. And I have make it into a bit of a joke if you can. If you can't, it doesn't matter. But then I went to, yes, and I've been, God, so many places. I've forgotten some of them, but a lot of places here in Europe. And I went and 2 years ago, I was in Malta promoting the Maltese Heart Foundation. They paid me to.
Funny.
Yeah. And I've got video of all this, which I want to send you, Anna.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I've got I see you've sent me your address, and I'll get a bloody chance of breathing space. I'll burn you some DVDs. I'm going to send it to you. And by the way, I think you're a rather beautiful woman, not because just the way you look, but I love your attitude, and I wish more white Australians were like you. But, the old ones, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but we've got to work with the young people and make aware. And I find a lot of people here very, very aware. So young people, most of my friends are young people, and I'm only a couple of years off 80, but I'm slowing down a bit.
What? You're a couple of years off 80?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Wow. Wow.
I've never had time to grow old, and I've never felt old.
And I was going to say, I think there's a lot to be said in the spirit of what you feel and how happy you are day to day makes you live a healthier life.
Yes. Well, health comes from, it doesn't come from depression and feeling sad all the time.
That's right.
It can create, and it does create, I believe, emotions are very strong in your body, and if those signals are sent to your body, the body's going to suffer because of it.
I was just going to say that if someone a lot of people today are very, very depressed, and have terribly low self-esteem. And if you're telling yourself every day, I'm this and I'm bad, or I don't like myself, then you're essentially telling your body that as well, and you're telling your cells that, so that there's no way
Yes.
until you change your thoughts that you will become better. And a lot of people don't really understand that, but luckily in some of the new fields of medicine, they are starting to realize that the way you think and the way you talk to yourself affects every part of your body. Um,
Yes, it does.
but yeah, I know a little bit more about what you've been doing with your life, and you've been a photographer. You do beautiful Aboriginal art as well.
Yes, I do that, yeah.
And you've co-written books with
Yes.
people. And what really blew me away was that there's a feature film that has it been made already, or
Yeah, so, well, it's supposed
it's
to
all
be
done
just about
now?
finished,
Yep.
but yeah, so many people got involved with it, and I'm not really happy how they've handled all that. They've asked for money off people, and that's the last thing I would ever do. I'd have to be stuck
Oh, that's the Indigo
Indigo
thing.
movie.
Oh,
But
I wouldn't feel so bad about that. I mean, I actually think it's a nice thing for people to be involved in because essentially that's what it is. Is you ask people to donate money to help something get off the ground, whether it's a business idea or a charity or something. And yeah, I mean, I think it's not going anymore, but I would personally love to donate money to help them make a movie about you. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's
But the
sweet what
trouble
you're
is,
saying.
there's a bit more to that story, my young friend. There's an American guy tied up with Kevin Brown, and Kevin Brown's very much a city boy, and I'm not right into city people. They think differently to me. I'm from the old school, and they raised about 10 grand, and I think we've been offered 52 grand from a Indigenous channel through a woman called Kylie something.
Yep.
I don't know her name, but anyway, the thing is that they went and spent that money without consulting me. I
Oh,
don't want
that's
the money, but
horrible.
I want it to be spent in the right way because
Yeah.
money is pieces of paper to me.
Yeah.
Money does. I've got no money, love. I live,
Mm.
but my woman looks after me, and I have many friends that actually do really love me, and I love them too. I've got a love for humanity. But I don't want to. I would never be dishonest because when you lie or be dishonest to others, you're doing it to yourself and you're
That's
doing
true.
it to the cause.
Yeah.
So I'm very dedicated in that way, passionate, because my father was like that. He was part Aboriginal fella. He was an incredibly honest man. He had a thing about it.
And
You know,
I would assume that is the Aboriginal way. That's your genetics
certainly
coming
was my
through.
dad's and my way, but
Yeah.
Aboriginal people have been corrupted by the white man's
Yeah.
greed too.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
goes all over. My cousin was on the Lands Council up there, and he got put off the Lands Council because he stood up and spoke out. I got some pretty strong relatives. Firebraces seem to be quite strong people. It's a
Well,
strong name,
the
isn't it?
name says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm strong, but I like to be fair. But
Yeah.
I'm also quite. I care about people. I've often taken men in my arms and they broke down crying, and started crying. And I sat squatted down with them and stroked their hair and give them a little bit of love. And people said, "What will people think, Francis?" I said, "I don't give a
Yeah.
fuck what people
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I'm not here to worry. What people think about me is none of my damn business. I like me, and that's the main thing. And as
Yeah.
long as I know in my heart that I'm doing the right thing by people, it's a huge buzz, darling. And it's meant to be in a spiritual way. That is your reward for being spiritual and open and helping people. You're meant to enjoy that.
That's right. Yeah.
This nonsense about being modest. It was a great day for fools when modesty was declared a virtue.
Now, what would you like to finish with? I don't know, just a message to anyone watching Now,
Okay. Is this going to be seen? Is it this?
oh yeah, we'll probably put it
Oh,
on. I'll put it on YouTube.
oh, cool. I
Yeah, yeah,
must
yeah,
have a
yeah,
look at
yeah,
that. I love
yeah.
seeing myself.
So it'll go out well
Oh,
today. So out on Australia Day. Um,
okay.
so
All
yeah,
right, darling. That's lovely. Just like to say a little bit more about Australia Day,
cool.
is that
Please do.
I've got a lot of white friends,
Yep.
and of course, because I'm half white, I'm half black. So how can I be racist against either side? I
Yes.
see everybody as brothers and sisters. But the thing that frustrates me is that getting across to white Australians the real story behind Aboriginal people and their culture. It is a totally different culture, and we are and always will be products of our culture, our upbringing, our parents, our friends, the people that surrounds us, everything that goes on. We form our basic opinions when we are children between the ages of, it varies according to the experts, but between 0, 7, 8 or 9 years old, you form your basic opinion. So it's important that we can reach children and just simply tell them the truth. Children have a right to know the
Yeah,
truth.
yeah,
Uh, Bringing children up and telling them, oh, they're too young to know about that, or some things perhaps they are, but about simple things like that, I think will breed out racism, because racists are an endangered species, and they're one species I don't intend to save.
yeah. Yep, yep, yep,
But
yep.
I've got a love for humanity and people, and I know that we're all connected. And I'm not religious. I certainly don't believe there's a bloke with a beard looks a bit like me living up in the sky watching you. But I do believe there's something so vast and so powerful that we could never comprehend it at this stage, because humankind, is in a stage of evolution.
Yep.
That's basic fact. That's simple fact. And we know we only use very small part of our brain, but there's so much more to it
Mm,
than that. And I just will tell you this. You don't have to use it, but as I said, I'm not religious. But a couple of things have happened to me in my life, and one of them was that I was on my boat, and I think it might have been I was 50 something, maybe 56 or something. I can't remember now. Anyway, I went to the cabin of the boat. I got up the night it was my birthday, and I got up on my boat, swung out of the double bunk up the front, and I walked home and opened the galley door, and there was a mirror on it. I thought I'm going to have a look at myself, see how I look now. What's the name? When I looked into the mirror, a strange thing happened, and I suddenly could see this. Suddenly my image became really sharp, and I could see every wrinkle, every crack in me, and I seen this old man looking back at me, and I was quite shocked and taken back momentarily. But when I looked into this old man's eyes, what I seen there, how can I explain this? It's just beautiful energy I could see back in this old man's eyes. It just blew me away. I just said, Jesus, something like that. And I looked away and rubbed my eyes and looked back, and it was me again. And it was me all the time. But I think I looked into my own spirit.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that
yeah,
might sound
yeah,
strange,
yeah.
but love, but I thought I'd share that. I don't tell many people that, but
Wow.
that's one of the things. I've had a few things happen. But then I thought maybe I was showing that to show me what there is something out there
Mm,
that's inside of us all called a spirit.
mm,
But all you've got to do is confuse that spirit, which the corporate companies do, because in America the companies aren't run. The people they put in power, the politicians, they're not in control. They do what they're told by
yes.
the corporate companies, who are the corporate companies are then told what to do by the federal bank, who are owned by the Zionists.
Mm,
And they're a dangerous group of people.
mm-hmm.
And people always say this conspiracies, what's it called? So-called conspiracies, there's a name for it.
Oh,
Um,
conspiracy theorists.
Theory, yeah.
Yeah, yep.
It's no damn theory. It's been going on for ages. Hitler used it, but he went insane. He went gone for too. Stalin used it to control people and get rid of millions of people.
Yeah.
They're awful people, and there's only a handful of them. They're like a deck of cards. If we stood up, we could get the sheep to wake up. They would fall like a pack of cards. You only need 2 or 3 million people here in London to walk in there, and the government would immediately have to change what they're doing.
Exactly.
There's people here suiciding because they're having their pensions stopped and that.
Yeah.
There's quite a few suicides, and I believe it is going to happen. I don't believe things are going to come good unless we, as a nation and as people, support one another and have the courage to stand up and do something about it.
So true.
And in a positive way, but numbers will overwhelm them and they will be forced into doing something. So, but I don't have easy answers, and I don't have easy answers for Aboriginal people except to try to understand in Aboriginal culture we are totally different to the white man. For instance, we didn't have to go to a 9-to-5 job. Why did you have to work? And if you think about it logically, why do you have to work? All you need is food, like my daughter's doing and Matt, and her mother does that. And of course, I believe in that too. So I always said I lived off the land for quite a long time with my dad, who was a hunter and a trapper, and I lived off the land. It's the proper way to live. We ate good food. Maybe that's why I'm strong. We didn't have chemically induced food. We are doing terrible things. And children, darling, are being watched continuously by their parents because as paranoia set in. Everybody's a pedophile. And there are no more pedophiles around now what there was 30 or 40 years ago. So fear, again, is the controlling factor. And it will keep controlling while you've got sheep that live with fear all the time. But we could go on and on like this. But my last thing I'd just like to say, Aboriginal people are like anybody else. We're beautiful people. And if we were let to live our life as we wish to live it, as long as we're not doing any harm, then that should be the way. And to be honest with you, Australia was and still is and always will be Aboriginal land.
You got it. Yeah.
Thank you, sister. And may I just say that I wish all my brothers and sisters much success in the spiritual ways of understanding and learning, and may 2014 be kind to us all, and may the awakening happen sooner than we expect, maybe.